Welcome back to the Stitch Happens Bra Making So Long. So we've now talked about our fabrics and our patterns, and we are ready to go ahead and start cutting. So the first thing that you're going to want to do is trace off your pattern. So today I'm going to be using one of the Elan bra patterns, and this is the number 645, and it comes printed on tissue. So if you've ever sewn with any of the big four pattern companies, it's just like that. So you're not going to want to cut this pattern out because we'd like to be able to use this one again. If you need to make a different size, either for yourself or if you're making for somebody else, we're not going to want to cut this up. This will be our master. So we're going to go ahead and trace our pieces out. So I like to use this tracing paper here, and this is actually medical table paper. So this is the same stuff that they use in doctors' offices on the tables there. You can get it really easily, which is one of the reasons why I like it. So it's available through your local medical supply space. You can sometimes get it online. There's also other tissues out there that are like specific to sewing, but a lot of them are a lot more expensive. So this is a really nice and cheap alternative. So I have here the pieces that I've traced off already. So there's just a few pieces to this pattern, and we're going to go ahead and start our layout. So this pattern needs to be done, there's two versions of it, but the version that we're doing here needs to be done out of a fabric with a bit of stretch. So I have here, this is the simplex that we talked about before. So it is a type of stabilized tricot. The first thing I need to do here is figure out my direction of greatest stretch. So direction of greatest stretch, the acronym for that is DOGS, and I'll be referring to it as DOGS from here on out, is basically which way does my fabric stretch the most. So is it in this direction or this direction? So with this fabric here, my dogs are definitely going in this direction. So your pattern usually has the dogs indicated on it. So when you go ahead and trace it out, you're going to want to trace these lines here that tell us which way our dogs are going. If your pattern doesn't say that, the easiest way to kind of remember it is that when a piece is going around the body, that's the direction that the dogs need to go in. So if it's going around my bust, like under bust, it needs to stretch in that direction around my rib cage. If it's something that's going over the breast tissue, it's going to want to stretch in the vertical direction. So you'll see here on, this is my lower cup piece, it's telling me that this is the direction for my dogs. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and fold my fabric here and lay out my piece. So this pattern here only has a few pieces to it, and only a couple of them need to be cut out of my stabilized tricot. So on this one here, the lower cup needs to be cut out. And so here we're going to go back to talking about those pins. So again, a lot of people will suggest that maybe you don't use pins because they don't in the bra making industry, but we're going to go ahead and use them here. So you don't need to use very many, these are really small pieces, but I like to throw in a few pins just to keep it in place. Okay, and then you have the option to use your Tailor shears. So I have a nice sharp pair of Tailor shears here, or we can go ahead and use that Rotary Cutter. So this is the Rotary Cutter I spoke about previously. So this one is an Olfa cutter. This is a 28mm Rotary Cutter, so it is much smaller than those big 45 ones that we see a lot for quilting. You can also go one size smaller to a 18mm, and that'll help you even more to get around those curves. I personally like the 28mm. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and cut around, and then just making sure if my pattern has any notches that I either cut those out, or that's where that washable marker or that marking pen or chalk is going to come in. So for something like black, I'm going to use a piece of chalk so that I can actually see my markings, or just cut out the notches. Okay, so being very precise is important here when we get into bra making, because you'll note that sometimes the sizes only vary by 1/4 of an inch, and your seam allowance in a lot of these cases is going to be 1/4 of an inch. So get in here, get all these little corners out, do a better cutting job than I have, and then you'll go ahead and have that piece. So this piece here, we need 2 because it is the lower cup. So obviously we have 2 cups that we'll be making here. And then the next piece that I'm going to do here is the bridge, and it extends into the frame. So this again is a full frame bra pattern, so it does extend underneath the cups from the bridge into the frame. And this one we only need 1 of them, so again I would lay it out. And again, if you want to use weights, you can do that. If you're using a PDF pattern and you like to use a projector, you could absolutely do that as well. So I'll go ahead and cut that out. Once I've cut that out, for this pattern, that's all I'll need to be doing out of this fabric. For some of the other patterns we've talked about, so like the classic bra, it has the frame and bridge in one longer piece, and then it also has a strap that is done out of your stabilized tricot. This one uses just strap elastic, so those are the only pieces that we need out of this. Okay. This bra pattern has the option for a lace upper cup used out of stretch lace. So we're going to do that version. And a couple things to note here when you're working with stretch lace. So the first thing is that most of the pieces that are used for stretch lace, especially if they're using it along the edge, will have a straight edge here. So I'm going to take this straight edge and I'm going to line it up with the lowest point in my scallop. Okay, so those valleys of the scallop on your stretch lace. The other thing I'm going to want to do is kind of look at my pattern placement here. So I have a floral design on this lace here, and I'm going to try and get that floral design into relatively the center of my cup. So again, I will line out up my edge here with the low point on that scallop. And then we're going to go ahead and cut it out. And so you'll notice here I am only cutting 1 layer, but we do obviously need 2 of these because again this is a part of our cup, so we need to have 2. But what we're going to do is mirror our lace so that we have a lovely professional look to our bra, and it is mirrored from one cup to the other. Okay, so once I have my first cup cut out here, and again be very careful that you're not cutting off parts of that tissue, going a little bit too far away from the tissue. This is a very precise cut. Okay, so I'll go ahead and unpin here. Okay, and then I'm not going to use my pattern piece. I'm actually going to pop that to the side, and I'm going to flip my lace over here, and then I'm going to take my cup that I just cut out, and I'm going to line it up on the design, and I'm going to go ahead and try and get my design to be the same on either side here. So what I've done here, you can kind of do it by just lining up the scallops, but then just double check as well, so you can see I have a flower here, and then again on the other side I have that same flower. So line it up, get it nice and even. And then I absolutely recommend using pins in this spot because I want to get my design exactly the same. Okay, and then you can again either use your rotary cutter or scissors. I'll use scissors on this cut. I'm going to turn it towards me so it's a little bit easier. So go ahead, do your cut. Again, keeping it nice and precise here. And you'll notice I don't use a lot of stretch lace here, so I used the piece I had here. It was about 30 inches long, and you'll see that there is still a bit left here, so I could even go with a smaller piece. Basically you need the size of your cups and then plus just a little bit depending on how the repeat is on your lace, just to get that kind of lined up. Okay, so my repeat wasn't huge on this one, so I was able to kind of squish it in a little bit better. But on this one, it kind of goes big flower, small flower, back to big flower, small flower. But on some of them, you might have more of a motif going on. So I'm almost done cutting out my bra. It's pretty quick. The last thing is the stretchy back band. So there's a lot of different options here. You could use a cotton lycra, bamboo lycra, an athletic knit, anything like that. But the traditional for bra making is to use power net. So I've got some power net here. And again, we're looking for direction of greatest stretch, but a lot of times on our power nets, the stretch is the same in both directions. What we're going to look for in our power net is there's kind of a brick laid design in our power net if you look at it very closely. So I'm going to stretch it in both directions, and I'm going to see in which direction are the bricks not getting distorted. So it's probably a bit hard for you to tell, but if I'm stretching this way, I'm kind of getting more of a honeycomb shape, whereas if I stretch this way, I get more of a brick elongated rectangle. So that's going to be my direction of greatest stretch. So direction of greatest stretch is when I stretch it and I don't have a distorted shape. So figure out how much space you need. So I'm going to go ahead and fold this way. And again, you're going to notice really quickly, I really don't need very much power net. So bras are definitely a great scrap busting activity. And then also too, if you buy a kit, if you buy one of our kits, you might find, especially with the power net, but that you have enough left to get at least one more bra back out of it, and maybe more than that. So again, I'm going to go ahead and lay this out here. So that direction of greatest stretch was just by identifying which way the mesh gets distorted. Okay, so once I have that laid out, I'm going to go ahead and cut this out, and then we will start our bra construction. Just a quick note if you have chosen to use lace on your pattern. So depending on the pattern that you use, they may tell you to do a couple different things. So sometimes, depending on where the lace is, you might need a little bit more stabilization. So there's something out there that's called shear cup stabilizer. And so I have some white shear cup stabilizer here. It's kind of like a rigid tulle fabric. So it's got a little bit of stretch in one direction, not too much in the other, a little bit of mechanical give. Some cup stabilizers will have absolutely no stretch in them. This one honestly has very, very little. But your pattern might recommend that you stabilize your cup if you're using lace. It may only recommend this if you're in a larger size, or if you've chosen to use stretch lace instead of rigid lace, if that's what your pattern called for. So you'll go ahead and cut a layer here out of your shear cup stabilizer. There's a few other things that they may tell you to do. They might tell you to use interfacing, so you'll use just regular interfacing, or maybe it will tell you to use knit interfacing. Again, this is where reading your pattern becomes very important. The other thing that they may just tell you to do is use a bit of either interfacing or stay tape along the upper edge of your cup, and that'll help keep it from gaping out. So a couple things that you can use for stay tape. There are actual bra making stay tapes that are out there. But you can also just use twill tape. So if you have a very narrow piece of twill tape, you're just going to stitch that with a zigzag on your lace. You do it against the lower edge of your scallop, or you could use a piece of interfacing there, and again, that's just going to keep your upper cup from gapping out. So if you do choose to use a lace upper cup, read your pattern. It may tell you that you will need to stabilize it.